everyone can hear me? Yep. Okay. So yeah, while this is uploading, I just want to thank everyone for coming. I know, I don't know if Todd's here. I know it's very late in Ukraine, so that's kind of where he is right now. But I just want to thank everyone for, I guess 2 years now, everyone sharing ideas and just being friendly and open, especially after the first semester, really helps sort of moving forward and allowing everyone to kind of speak their mind and just sort of throw ideas out there. So that's been really good. Also, it's really heartwarming to know that even if I do mess up here, you're all going to still be sitting here listening to me anyway. So, to get on with it, my thesis was all about looking at examining microlearning through smartphone applications in a retail environment. And what that is basically focusing around small segments of information, which I guess will make sure that I won't go over time right now. But I chose it because I used to work in a retail environment where we would have to actually be removed and go to a second location to complete our training, as well as we'd have to sit in front of a computer for a half hour to an hour to actually do training. And it took away from our time on either the sales floor, helping customers, and so on. So people would come up to you and they'd ask for help, and you couldn't help them because you're sort of told to complete your training before you can actually help anyone. And so it's really counterproductive to do that in terms of the sales force not being able to help people. And so training programs do have a direct result on company's sales, the employee's product knowledge, as well as increase in customer satisfaction. Through the research that I was looking at, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business found that over $18 billion is spent annually training employees. And it's one of those things that when you're hearing about these large numbers and these large dollar figures being spent, you start thinking about, is there a more efficient way to train people, have them doing their job and doing their job in a more efficient manner, which I'll get into some of the definitions, than what's currently happening. So for my framework, I'll jump into that. What I looked at after a great deal of sort of looking around and discovering microlearning is the theory of cognitive load. And I'm going to go over each of these in just a second. In terms of independent variables, because it's microlearning, I wanted to focus on the length or the size of each of the learning modules. And then I was looking at employee competency, and the indicators would be behavior change. In one particular case is increase in product knowledge. So in terms of competency, when I talk about employee competency, I'm thinking as a positive change behavior, which is measured against employees' set standards. Now, every company does have a different specific set of standards, and so you can't measure all employees with one specific thing. But I found through the research that each department, especially in a retail environment, has very similar measures that they want to hit. So for instance, customer interactions, you're going to want to make sure that is constantly high, and members of the sales force or customer service, cashiers, they're all going to need to be good at interacting with customers, as well as product knowledge. So everyone's going to benefit from an increase in product knowledge. So these are the sort of things that I looked at when doing the research. Now, moving forward, the big question is microlearning. And it took me a long time to find this term in particular. And I remember looking through tons and tons of research, and no one really talked about it. And I stumbled across some blog on some random website at like 2 a.m. And it was some guy talking about microlearning. And so with that keyword, I was then able to go back and start finding more and more information. Now, microlearning is based on the idea that people can learn more effectively when the content is broken down into smaller parts or modules. It's been around for about a decade. And with the first International Microlearning Conference being conducted back in June of 2005, so it's a relatively new idea. Now, through the research, I found there's no standard model for microlearning. However, the literature provided useful descriptions of its general nature and scope. Much of literature defined it as having 7 key characteristics, following our relatively short time to complete. So we're looking at 10 to 15 minutes. Small units, content with very narrow topics. So you don't want to have this wide range of information. You want to really focus it down. It would be part of a curricular setting or parts of a module formed of fragments or episodes, independent and uncertain process, and contain rich media. Now, the term microlearning, as you can see in the little image that I have here, doesn't necessarily have to refer to the actual content being produced, but it could be an overall description of a delivery method. So you can see here, I have micro-learning, which encompasses micro-content, so it's small modules put together to create micro-learning. And if we think about the AEDT program that we're in, although they don't go out and say that the YouTube videos that we're watching is a part of micro-learning theory or ideas, when you think about it, breaking it down into smaller segments like 10 to 15-minute YouTube videos, being independent of each other but also fit together, you could see that could be a part of micro-learning. The next part that I looked at, which was a big key in terms of the underlying theory of microlearning, was cognitive load theory. Now, it's based around, it's formulated by this theorist John Sweller in the 1980s, and it's based on two types of human memory, which is working memory, is limited, it can only handle so much information before it becomes overloaded, and long-term memory, where the information is stored and retrieved. The idea is that by not exceeding the learner's working memory capacity, one can increase transfer of information into long-term memory. So research on cognitive load theory proposes there are three types of cognitive load. Intrinsic, which is the level of complexity of the material being studied. Extraneous, the cognitive load imposed by non-relevant materials. And germane, so elements that allow cognitive resources to be put towards learning, assisting with information processing. And these three types are additive. So you can see here is a little equation. And you want to make sure that once they're all added together, they don't overload the working memory capacity. So the example that I have, just to quickly demonstrate this a little bit better, is you're looking at this piece of scientific graphic here. Many of us might not look at, yeah, thanks, Roland. Many of us might not know exactly what this means, right? And I could put together this module that breaks down exactly how this is all put together and what each of these numbers mean, or numbers and letters. But the way that it would work a little bit better is if you had one module to, say, cover each of the elements in the periodic table. And then once the students or the learners have that understood, then you have another module that defines how to read something like this. And then you have another one to sort of figure out how to put these equations together or how to formulate equations. And that way you're not overwhelmed with having to learn both A, what you're looking at, B, what do these symbols mean, and how does it all work together. So now that we have a grasp on all of this, let's talk about my findings. After digging through tons and tons of research and going over cognitive load theory and microlearning, it's key that in the retail environment, people and employees can use both mobile devices as well as workstations and things like that to complete these 5-10-minute learning modules. And there was one piece of research that I found, which is based on the Reload program by Bakoch and DeVries in 2010. And what they did, although they didn't specifically call it microlearning, but they took mobile devices, gave it to employees in a retail environment, and gave them small segments of training. And they found that the employees not only found that more enjoyable, but they also found it beneficial because then the employer could actually push new information directly to the employees' devices so that they're always on top of things with relevant information, rather than having to cart them out to either a new location. Whereas in my case, when I was working at TELUS, I had to go to a completely different building, spend 2 days outside of the store. Whereas with microlearning, you're able to put that information right in the palm of your employees' hands, and between tasks or between customers, they're able to look down on their phone, complete a couple training modules, 10 minutes, complete a little bit of quizzes or whatever you have, and then go from there. So I see a red light. I don't want to go too far over, as I want to make sure I manage my time since it's all about microlearning. But yeah, so any questions? I know I covered quite a lot. Let's see this. The priority between marketing versus critical thinking. So yeah, in terms of, I mean, going back to the reload program, hopefully I can answer this question. At the end of the reload program, they had different employers asking for this reload. It was basically software that they made, asking for them to continue to use it rather than just having it part of the study, because it was so flexible in terms of the delivery, and the employees loved it. So instead of critical thinking, I mean, if we think about operating a register or sales techniques and things like that, those are the types of things that the reload program was focusing on. But this is something that theoretically you could use for various instances. Yes, it's very similar to chunking. So again, small segments or small modules. So much like the AEDT program with YouTube videos, where you're limited, I'm assuming, to 10 to 15 minutes per video, and each of these videos, from what I can tell, are very individual, although they do fit in a larger course, I guess, week's course. Is Brendan?
Hey, can you hear me okay? Okay, perfect, sorry. Okay, so I just had a quick question, and you might have explained this, I apologize, but does microlearning require a mobile device or just any kind of digital device? Like, does it require it to be like kind of at their fingertips at the ready, or can they kind of like go to a desktop like instantaneously?
Yeah, it's either or. So I was focusing on having things in palms of their hands, sort of learn anywhere, anytime, sort of thought behind it. But no, the idea behind microlearning is that you could, as I said with the AEDT program, you could watch it on your phone or you can watch it on desktop. I mean, that's the same sort of thing with the employees. They can have a workstation that they go to for 5 minutes and complete this piece of training, or they could do it on their phone.
And I know a lot of like I've been in a lot of situations where there's an update or something comes in through head office, and you have to go around and relieve all your employees and send them to that one desktop that you have and cycle through 20 employees, by end of day or by a certain time. So yeah, I can see the need obviously for something more at the ready, tablet, cell phone, something app related. But I know it can be challenging. Every setting would be have its own obstacles as far as workplace. So I guess it's a constant juggle.
Yeah, exactly. And what you described is exactly what sort of brought to mind back in September is thinking about the training that I went through and how everyone was sort of lined up, and at the end of the day they're like, everyone needs to get this done, and you've been putting it off because you're trying to make sales and deal with the customers, but at the end of the day you got to get it done. So yeah.
Just a quick question, Rob. When you were doing your research around microlearning, did you come across anything around sort of micro-credentials? I know that's a big thing that there's a lot of talk about in education in terms of recognizing sort of these short modular pieces, whether it's using a digital badge or some sort of recognition for microlearning. So I don't know if you came across anything around that topic.
No, not in the research. I know that was something that came up in one of the classes. I don't know which one it was. It might have been one of the other ones, not the thesis one. But in terms of the research, no, there was nothing in terms of credentials, micro-credentials. It's definitely an interesting idea, though, especially with I know that the Ontario government. I think there was some sort of training I had to do, some workplace training, and it was like hour and a half, I think, something like that, to complete. which seems like a really long, a long time. But you know, if they had put that into this using the microlearning concepts, that might have been a little bit more enjoyable than people just kind of clicking through and trying to get to the end. Any other questions?
Real quick question.
Sure.
Gordon. A lot of the, you know, we've been working together, I guess, last year or so in ads and anyways, I was just wondering where, with the changes in the retail industry and like we've done a lot of, like we've done coffee shops, we've done, you know, technology stores, things like that. I was just wondering, where do you sort of see training for maybe online or something? I'm not too sure. Is there something there, or I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying is where's the future of training in retail, and that's a really tough one because there are some companies that really do need their employees in a room rather than doing some sort of module. I think there's always going to be a need for that, but I think a lot of the training is going to move towards small bursts. And one of the things that I sort of looked through the research, and even though it's not ending up in the final paper, is the idea behind this new generation of tweeting and Pinterest and Instagram, these small segments of information that they're sort of throwing out there on Facebook, these small updates, and people getting used to that and getting used to, you know, getting these small bits of information. And the connection, although, as I said, is not going to be in the final paper, but the connection between, say, tweets and the way people are learning and absorbing information is quite interesting compared to, you know, 50 years ago. I don't know how much time we have left to it. Brendan?
Anything to say? I just want to strengthen what you said. I think that's a really, really good point, Robert. And like, for instance, Home Depot or Lowe's, I'm part of their Twitter handle or their feed, and there's times when, you know, their head office or they have a communications officer who's pounding that social media with relevant information changes, and it'll be there before the employees know it. So if there's, you know, an employee who's connected and they have their company's feed to social media, they're going to be educated through these, you know, digital updates and through these kind of forms of micro-learning before, you know, they might even hit the desktop or go through a traditional sense. So it's interesting. I think you did a good job.
Thanks.
So I think we'll cut questions off for now. Thank you so much, Rob. And again, lots of really interesting things coming forward in terms of applicability and how this can be used, definitely in a retail setting, but you could see it being used across other settings as well. So thank you, Rob. And I think last but not least, we have Advait is going to be our final presenter of the evening.